Hi guys, and welcome back to Tech Corner. My name's Picasso, and today we're going to be talking about the Prophet Rev2 by Dave Smith and Sequential. So, the Prophet Rev2 is Dave Smith's reimagining of the Prophet 08 polysynth, a modern classic that has appeared on countless recordings and stages since its debut in 2007. Now, the Prophet Rev2 keeps all the main features of the Prophet 08, but expands on them. It has twice the polyphony and twice the mod matrix, plus wave shape modulation on all waveforms, digital effects per layer in stack or voice mode, a polyphonic step sequencer per layer, and more. The results, a true analog powerhouse. And the best thing about this is that you can still download all of the original Prophet 08 libraries. And inside this new Prophet, they're well enhanced. So the Prophet Rev2 comes in either 8 voices or 16. When it comes to the 16 voice version, you literally have 16 options to play with and you can allocate them as you wish. So as we get deeper into the Prophet, we start to unravel that by stacking sounds upon sounds, we can come up with some really complex textures. Or split the keyboard into 2 completely different 8 voice instruments. Now if you have the 8 voice version, it can later be expanded to the 16 voice if you choose to do. So the Prophet Rev2 comes with a bold sound and is supported by its 2x4 low pass resonant Curtis filter per voice. Now these are the same filters not only used on the Prophet 08 but in many instruments in the 70s and the 80s. A separate audio mod control adds additional harmonic complexities and movement. Now one of the powerful new features about the Prophet Rev2 is its wave shape modulation. So you can now vary the pulse width on any of the 4 waveforms: sawtooth, saw plus triangle, triangle, and square. Using the shape mod control, you can manually dial in the desired wave shape width, or use an LFO or another mod source for a continuously shifting timbre. With this, even single oscillator sounds take on new depths and new dimensions. So the tonal possibilities here are vast. I mean, literally, you can pretty much get what you want out. You just have to know how and have a little bit of patience to do so. Which is why I recommend just sitting down with one when you get some time and having a fiddle with all the buttons and knobs and figuring out what they do and how they shape that sound. So the effects section provides reverbs, delays, chorus, phase shifting, ring modulation, and distortion. In stacked or split voice modes, you can apply a different effect to every single layer. Effects parameters can be modulated through the mod matrix. And if you're anything like me, this is where it starts to become real fun. And that's why in this version, as opposed to its predecessor, they've made it even easier to operate. So it's now twice as big with 8 individual slots for many more sources and destinations. So in other words, it's like a sound designer's playground. It also includes polyphonic step sequencing. The polyphonic sequencer allows 64 steps and up to 6 notes per step. You can create a different sequence for each layer when operating in stacked or split voice, which makes it an incredibly powerful tool for composition. And in fact, it's one of my favorite tools to use for composition because the truth of the matter is you don't know what sound you're going to get until you start to mess around. The sequencer also functions as a modulation source in gated mode, allowing you to create 4 different 16-step sequences for complex modulation. Sequences allow ties and rests and can sync to a MIDI clock. The arpeggiators features, notes repeat, and relatching can be synced to the MIDI clock as well, which again means it's really easy to sync up with your DAW and make sure things in time even when using analog equipment. The per knob function front panel offers instant access to the Prophet Rev2 functions. Included in that are 512 permanent factory programs and 512 rewritable user programs, meaning you can save up to 512 of your own presets. So all of this polyphonic power comes stacked up into 5 octaves. It's a premium quality, semi-weighted keyboard with velocity and channel aftertouch. Comes with its own power supply, USB support, and its own crisp OLED display. Now all this to me is what makes the Prophet Rev2 so worth its money. It also means that it's perfect for recordings and for gigging. So I use it a lot in the studio and I use it a lot for live performances. I find for live performances in particular, I can really rely upon its sound and its robustness. Add that to the fact that I've now integrated it into my studio compositions. It's one of the best keyboards that I've had the pleasure of using. It doesn't necessarily come in cheap, but I think that speaks about the quality of materials used and the quality of time that you can expect to get out of this thing. It's really a solid piece of kit and adds so much warmth and depth to recordings. If you've never used an analog piece of equipment with your recordings, then this is certainly something that I would recommend. Of course, it still functions as a MIDI keyboard, which is absolutely fantastic, meaning that I can just trigger sounds in my DAW direct through this. But much more than that, it comes with so many sounds and such flexibility within those sounds to reshape and represent that it just seems to be completely endless. But like I always say, try before you buy, borrow, hire, lease, do what you need to, spend a little bit of time with one and see if it's for you. Truthfully, I found that I don't use it in everything, that when I do use it, it adds so much character, it's worth every penny. So I hope that's been helpful. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. We're going to be back next week for another episode of Tech Corner. Until then, peace.